guys have Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
And I feel like a perfect fit for Ben Simmons would be a team like Minnesota, right? The Timberwolves, where he could surround himself with young talent like Anthony Edwards, a stretch big like Karl Anthony Towns, right, that loves to stretch the floor, pick and pop big, where Ben Simmons could be the facilitator, dribble handoff guy, being a live threat at the basket, those type of things. I feel like that Ben Simmons is a guy that needs to be on a team where he doesn't have outside distractions.
Reckless speculation.
Inject that into my veins, boys. Oh,
Hold
I need
on.
a cigarette after
was
that
that
Kendrick Perkins clip.
Was that clickbait? Because I mean, that's never going to happen.
No,
Nothing to
no.
click
Why do
on,
you guys
man.
talk about this?
Yeah.
Nothing to click on.
What? How long
Is
ago
no
did I tell
national
you
reporters
guys?
talking about this?
You guys are just making stuff up.
How
over
long
there.
ago did I tell you? I told Doogie, stop trying to break news about this. Stop trying to make phone calls. Just quit. The Timberwolves are just fine how they are. I love this.
Well, so for the audio only audience, that was Kendrick Perkins from ESPN in his car with this. I think he was driving. He had a seatbelt
He
on.
might have
He's
been.
just like
Yeah.
on national TV slinging takes about Ben Simmons being a great fit for the Timberwolves. Gets T-boned by a semi mid take. But he's like in his car. It's sort of weird.
That's terrible. I
We
mean,
should
T-Bone, poor guy.
We should have Judd do the next show just in his car.
Reckless
You know, I actually tried to do an afternoon Judd with the phone in my cell phone holder in my car.
It's dangerous.
But the problem is it shoots you really poorly, and so I look like I weighed 600 pounds instead of what I currently weigh, which is also
High
too
angles,
much.
Judd. High angles.
No, but you can't. But that's my point: is you
Yeah.
can't do high angles. So I'm going to go on a big weight loss program, and then everything's going to be for my
There
car.
we go. So this is Mackey and Judd, daily Minnesota sports entertainment, ScoreNorth.com, the Score North app, and also the Score North YouTube channel. And we're just going to go through a couple things here. A lot has happened on the Ben Simmons front as it pertains to the Timberwolves as well. The last 24 hours, a lot of new credible reporting. And then I wanna refresh your memories. There's a lot of people that are, well, yeah, I mean, look at the price tag. The Wolves don't have the assets and this and that. People are forgetting a very recent local example, similar example of something that led to a superstar being traded for about 50 cents or less on the dollar. And we'll get to that. But here's the latest. Here's what we know. We'll get to write that down, predictions later too. The Philadelphia Inquirer first reported that Ben Simmons told the Sixers brass, I think it was last week, that this conversation took place. The reporting came out yesterday that he no longer wants to be a Sixer and does not intend to report to training camp. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people are like, well, wait, didn't that already happen? No, that hasn't actually happened yet. All of the trade talk to this point has been not speculative because these conversations have been happening. The Wolves have made an offer or two to the Sixers. The Raptors made an offer. But Simmons had just distanced himself from the organization, stopped answering people's texts and calls, and was just fuming for the last few months. Now he has gone the extra step and said, oh, in case there's any thought that I was going to show up and this was all going to blow over, I want out. I'm not playing for the Sixers. Chris Broussard went on Fox Sports 1 this morning. Declan found this, and he said there's been some thought that Ben Simmons would only play for 3 teams in California. Well, first of all, he doesn't control that. He's under contract. I don't think he has a no-trade clause. They can just trade him. Mm-hmm. I might be wrong on that, but he's saying, Chris Broussard's saying, oh, no, he'll play for any of the other 29 teams except the Sixers. He just doesn't want to play for the Sixers. Mm-hmm. Shams from The Athletic reporting the Timberwolves have been motivated to find a deal for Simmons, but would likely require a third team given their asset pool of Malik Beasley, Jaden McDaniels, and D'Angelo Russell might not entice the Sixers. I don't know if that means the Wolves offered those players in a package.
Right. And
it's awfully suspicious that he's floating those 3 names specifically.
Well, and that is exactly going back probably more than a month what Doogie has said as well. Mm-hmm. So like he's gotten the same info, which is the ideal trade because the Wolves probably don't match up super well with the Sixers, is involve a third team, move, I don't know, D'Lo and Beasley to a third team, and then orchestrate a Ben Simmons trade. So this is where like Dukes has been on top of this and obviously talking to people for quite some time. And now it's just basically the snowball starting to roll down the hill nationally.
I'm glad that you brought that up real quick. I think Dukes deserves a lot of credit. Doogie has been in front of some of the best NBA reporters in the country on this. Now, like, obviously Shams and Johnny K do an amazing job. I'm not trying to slight those guys, but Doogie has been ahead of everyone on this Ben Simmons reporting. The people he's talking to, it's ironclad. Johnny K, speaking of him, Athletic, he had a story that came out last night. The Timberwolves' lack of activity at power forward this offseason is they need power forwards. All these options have been flying around. They haven't jumped in. Mm-hmm. That lack of activity all points one way, to Ben Simmons. And he lays out the Wolves have been, according to his senses, the most aggressive team pursuing Simmons. And Johnny adds a couple things. Number one, the Sixers had been hopeful that Damian Lillard would demand a trade from Portland, and they could do some sort of a Simmons-Lillard swap, maybe include a third team. But to this point, Damian Lillard hasn't been aggressive in trying to push his way out. I don't know if Chauncey Billups has gotten to him. You know, they've made a couple little moves here and there. They're certainly not a title contender, but Damian Lillard has remained at least somewhat loyal to Portland. He's been frustrated, and he's voiced his frustration to different people behind the scenes. But if the Sixers are waiting for Damian Lillard to make this whole thing happen, it hasn't happened yet. Training camps start in about 3.5 weeks. And if Damian Lillard isn't available, it drives the price down for Simmons. Mm-hmm. The second thing with Johnny K, he apparently said on KFXN radio in the Twin Cities yesterday that Ben Simmons is open to playing for the Timberwolves if it came down to that. And then I'll add this too. Patrick Beverley loves all of this. He's active on social media. And there was an NBA reporter named Ben Steiner who tweeted, "Add Ben Simmons to D'Angelo Russell, Cat, and Anthony Edwards, and you've got a contender." To which Patrick Beverley retweeted with facts and eyeball emojis. Whoa. So, what are your thoughts on the latest developments here? The last 24 hours, Ben Simmons, as it pertains to the Timberwolves.
My thoughts are this: never dismiss the truthfulness of reckless speculation. It's a lifestyle.
Reckless speculation.
And I will say this: when you can put the pieces of the puzzle together before the rest of the country does, it becomes pretty simple to see what's coming. The best part about this is this conversation is not about to embark on rehashing more, though, and being like, well, can they do it now? This conversation, like this show has been, and I got to give us credit here, and Dukes included, is going to
Don't dislocate your shoulder, patting ourselves on the back there.
No, but I mean, this is the stuff that people, because this is why it drives me crazy, that fans are like, no, you guys don't know what you're talking about. It's like, no, if you've covered sports and watched sports for a long time, the off the court, off the ice, or off the field stuff becomes quite clear. And it doesn't mean it's going to happen for sure, but behind the scenes, it's happening.
The Wolves have been trying to make this happen for 3 months now.
But what I was going to say is, so what's the next step? The next step is this. Daryl Morey, who runs the Sixers, is going to have to get his basketball brain, which, by the way, is a pretty good basketball brain, around the fact that he's never going to maximize the return for Simmons that he thinks he is now. And the sooner he gets past that dilemma, the quicker he will actually make his life simpler. And he will actually probably get, Phil, a better trade. Because as you're going to bring up, the more you dig your feet in as an executive in a situation like this and say, I know you're coming in, no, you're going to do this. And in the NBA especially, guess what happens? Said player will make your life a living hell and your team and cause problems, and you don't want that. So I think what we should do is continue to explore what the next steps are, because quite frankly, Mackey and Judd have been ahead of the curve on this the entire time because of the depth and experience we all bring to this fine show.
Reckless speculation.
We covered Brett Favre playing for the Vikings, okay?
Oh,
like you want the stupidest, no way, you're an idiot, that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
One of the greatest Green Bay Packers of all time, forced his way to the Vikings. Don't tell us, no, you guys have gone too far now.
No, this is it's funny. I think a lot of fans have amnesia when it comes to the big moves that Minnesota sports teams make, even college. Remember, Tubby Smith came to Minnesota from Kentucky, and now obviously he was sort of on the downslide, but like he left Kentucky to come to Minnesota, 15 years ago or whatever it was. Jared Allen, Hall of Fame defensive end, Brett Favre, right? Like these moves happened. The Jimmy Butler trade.
Herschel Walker in 1989 came to Minnesota.
Minnesota teams can be splashy. The Twins aren't as splashy. Twins don't tend to make the big trades they need at the deadline. The Wild signed Parisi and Suter all in one fell swoop. Like,
right.
So in terms of, well, that would never happen. Like the Timberwolves, no. The Timberwolves have been trying to make this happen, and it makes, as Kendrick Perkins said, it makes a lot of basketball sense. Mm-hmm. Ben Simmons can't shoot. That's less of a problem here because guess who can? Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards. If they can swing it without trading D'Angelo Russell, he can shoot, right?
Yep.
You're probably gonna have to trade Beasley, but they've got guys who can shoot on this team. It takes less pressure off of Ben Simmons,
and it's a top 5 market for what Ben Simmons wants in life right now. This is a top 5 place.
Super cold weather or what?
Oh no,
passive aggressiveness.
You're out of the
hot dish.
You're out of the spotlight a little bit. It helps you out. Like why does he not want to be with the Sixers? Because it's a awful sports town when you're not going well. He's lost his confidence. He can't shoot. And if he's ever going to regain that confidence, it's not going to be playing for the Lakers, the Celtics, the Sixers, or Knicks, right?
Well, but I think he's down for a trade to Golden State, which has a bright spotlight. I mean, that's a dynasty at the tail end.
If I'm advising him, I'm like, Minnesota's a pretty good place right now for you.
I agree with that. I think it would be great for him to just sort of fly under the radar. This team would be really good with him on it. This team should be really competitive without him. This team would legitimately be like, you don't want to face them. I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but like,
yeah, you are.
But they're Cat, Ant, and what he could become, and Ben Simmons. I'm not pumping the brakes on that. As Rami Maklov, our former co-host and colleague, would say, I'm cutting the brakes, and I'm not looking back.
Oh, boy.
But a name was mentioned here. I think when it comes to, you brought up Daryl Morey, and he's going to have to come to terms with the fact that you're not going to get the James Harden-like return that you wanted for him. When Ben Simmons' name was floated last year around this time and before the draft last year as a guy that might get traded for the number 1 pick, but his value is not the same as it was a year ago. And I have a recent local example that we need to highlight here after we shout out PXG Minneapolis. If you've got some extra time on your hands because you're refusing to report to training camp, what better place to go than PXG Minneapolis to check out some of the brand new Gen 4 golf clubs, some of the best clubs on the market. PXG Minneapolis in Southdale Center is a golfer's paradise. You're going to walk in. It's a mecca. It just makes you feel good about your golf game walking in. So check out some of the apparel, too. They still have some summer and fall apparel. PXG Minneapolis and pxg.com/Minneapolis. So Jimmy Butler was a top 20 player in the NBA when he dragged the Timberwolves to the playoffs, 4 years ago or whatever the timeline was, 3-4 years ago. And it became such an unworkable situation that he also was saying all summer long, like he had stopped communicating with the front office and Tom Thibodeau. He had conflicts with teammates. I'm not saying Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons at all have the same personality. I'm saying there was a fallout, didn't get along with teammates, didn't like the organization's communication or direction, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And it just came to a crossroads where, like, I'm not going to play for this team long term, is what Jimmy Butler said, right? Now, the Wolves kind of blew past that stop sign, brought him to camp, and he clowned everyone in camp. He set up an interview with Rachel Nichols on national TV, and then I believe he played like 10 regular season games before they wound up saying, all right, enough is enough. Let's just be done with this. But you remember, he was so adamant about bursting his way out of Target Center that they wound up getting, for again, a top 20 player in the NBA. Contracts are a little bit different. Simmons has more years left than Jimmy Butler did, and so there's more value in terms of like the number of years. But the Wolves wound up getting Robert Covington, basically like he's a depth guy. Like he's a starter, but he's not a star player by any means. Dario Saric, role player, and Jared Bayless, and no draft picks from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Because the Star made it clear, hey, this is a divorce that's happening publicly. I don't want to play here anymore. I don't like my teammates. I just don't want to play here anymore. So figure it out and deal me. And once that happens, the clock starts ticking. It basically comes down to how uncomfortable are you willing to get, right? And it puts the team in a really tough spot. Once the Star comes out and says, I just don't want to play here anymore,
Correct.
you almost have no choice but to trade that player for 50 cents on the dollar. And I really think Gerson Rosas has played this perfectly so far. Whether they wind up getting Ben Simmons or not remains to be seen. But he has seen this playing field very clearly and said, well, Dame hasn't demanded out yet. Beal hasn't demanded out yet. And there might not even be those teams might not even be interested in Ben Simmons to the degree that we are. So I'm just going to be patient, slow play this out, and let Daryl Morey realize how much he's backed into a corner with Ben Simmons. And I think the Wolves could very much wind up getting him for a lot less than, like, the initial package was like 4 first-round picks and a star player. It's like you're going to give up more than the Sixers had to give up for Jimmy Butler a few years ago, but you're not going to have to give up anything near what the Nets gave up for James Harden.
The most important thing that a GM has when a star player like a Simmons or a Butler comes to him and says, I want out, is the element of time to keep it quiet. Because if you start to call around and say, Ben Simmons, had a terrible playoff, but he's a really good player, but I'd like to trade him. Teams are like, oh, interesting. Okay. That might work. When it gets out, the player wants out. As a GM, you're compromised because now teams are saying, hold on a second here. And again, I'll go back to, this is extremely important in basketball because in this sport, we've seen it. Guys can cause havoc. They can wreak havoc off the court. It's going to cause you massive problems. And so I'm with you. I think that the Wolves, months ago, I think we said, well, man, there's just no package. Like there's no path to a trade. I'm not saying that the package won't be full of draft picks and a good deal for the Sixers, but what I am saying is there damn well is a path now. And the thing that Morey has to get past is the Dame factor, okay? As you've said, Phil, he hasn't asked out. I think that he's frustrated, but I think he sort of wants to make it work. So like he is at the end stages of marriage of let's go to counseling, where Simmons is like, I need a divorce. So when Daryl Morey gives up the Dame factor and the whole thing of I'm going to hold out for him because he's not getting him. He's not going to. The Portland Trailblazers are not going to trade him until they absolutely have to. When he accepts that, now the question becomes, what's the best package that you can get? And if you take this into the season, it's going to get worse. The package is not going to improve because like the Wolves aren't going to, this isn't a deal where a team has a player hurt and says, well, now we're going to pay top price, right? This is a deal where the Wolves would get this guy for the long term because they like him, but they're not going to say, well, now we're going to give you the world. So again, I think this goes back to Morey getting his head around the fact that he is very compromised because now it's out everywhere that this guy has no interest in playing for his team. And it does have to play a role that at this point, Ben Simmons is, to a certain degree, damaged goods. Like the last time we saw him, he couldn't shoot.
I think one of the problems here, though, is I do believe the reporting and the thought that even if the price comes down, the Wolves probably still need a third team, especially if the Sixers don't want D'Angelo Russell. And again, in a perfect world, you could sort of sharpen this pencil down to the point and corner the Sixers to the point where you don't give up D'Angelo Russell. Listen, if they don't want D'Angelo Russell, that's great. Cool. Then, all right, let's get a third team involved and figure out,
sure.
All right, what does that third team need from both of us to get you guys a perimeter? So the Sixers want a perimeter ball handling, three-point shooting, combo guard, presumably, that can just space things better. Because their two superstars aren't really, like Joel Embiid's a better outside shooter than Ben Simmons, but he's playing down in the low block more often. And so they just need someone that can unclog things. And, if they thought more highly of D'Angelo Russell, then it would make some sense. The 2 years ago version of Russell for the Nets might have been a perfect combination there. But you need to figure out who that third team is and who's that perimeter player. If it's not Beal, if it's not Lillard,
right,
who is it? And and that's the thing. If there isn't a player like that available, what do the Sixers do?
Well, and
Do they just swallow hard and trade him for 30 cents on the dollar?
let me give you the one thing that could expedite this very, very quickly where like the Wolves that they would have to make a straight up trade. It's this one. If Embiid and Simmons can't coexist as humans and players, like if Embiid truly behind the scenes has said, you pick me, get him out of here. Okay. You know, as well as I do, that won't work. So like, you can't be like, well, we'll just bring Ben in and we'll try and milk this for all it's worth and then trade him. So the one way that I could see that the Wolves could expedite this thing and actually eliminate the need for a third team is if the Sixers find themselves in a position where those two simply can't be on the floor or in, probably more importantly, the same locker room together, because then you have to make a move because you will poison your season if you force that one.
By the way, Embiid is already clearly somebody has gotten to Embiid and said, dude, you need to help. Like, unless you want this to turn into a mess in a month at camp, you need to help us here. So from a PR perspective. So there's a report out from the USA Today also this morning that the Simmons-Embiid rift had been escalating. A person with knowledge told the USA Today sports department that the Sixers had to pick between Embiid and Simmons, which we knew they were probably going to have to do. But, like, personally, they just don't like each other enough to where they can't coexist, right? It is a little bit like Cat and Jimmy Butler to some extent. And Embiid retweets this article and says, trust me, bro, stop using my name to push people's agendas. I love and hate drama. I love playing with Ben. He says, I love playing with Ben.
Okay.
Stats don't lie. He's an amazing player, and we all didn't get the job done. It's on me personally. I hope everyone is back because we know we're good enough to win. So that's a lie.
Yeah.
He doesn't love playing with Ben.
Yes.
And he doesn't hope that everyone's back. But in order for something to change here and for them to boost the value of Ben Simmons, they need some leverage back. So they probably went to Joel Embiid and said, dude, like, please, like, send something out, like putting your arm around Ben Simmons so that we can gain some leverage back because people think we have to trade him. Well, but it's too late at this point.
Yes. And he is not returning their calls. I mean, when Ben Simmons, when you call him and he's either changed his cell phone number or flat out just hits go right to the voicemail mechanism, it's over. It's just over. So yeah, this is why this is definitely going down a path that if you're the Wolves, you love. But I'm telling you, Morey has to get past the whole thing with Dame. Because once he does, what he's got to start to do is sort through the offers that he really has, not the ones he wants. It's that simple.
Do you want there? I did find, I think Declan might have sent this to us. I can't remember where I saw this. Executive producer probably sent it to us. 4 ideal Ben Simmons trade scenarios.
Well, that was Judd. That was the associate producer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing you mentioned, too, was also sent by the associate producer, Judd Zolgad.
I was working hard.
Yeah,
I've been working hard on this Ben Simmons stuff, trying to make our show look as good as possible.
So just real quick here, I'm just going to float these, and then we'll get to some write that down.
Reckless speculation.
This is from Sportsnaut, N-A-U-T. Sportsnaut.
Good speculation from them.
Man.
Great speculation.
Great speculative.
They're good at
website.
speculation.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club.
So there's a Ben Simmons to the Spurs package for a bunch of young players and 2 future first-round picks. Actually, I think Popovich would do some good things with Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
Just a good
Oh, yeah.
defensive perimeter guy, pass, rebound. Then there's the Timberwolves package. Sixers would get D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jaden McDaniels, and a future first-round pick for Simmons and Seth Curry, who's one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA.
Isn't that close to what you threw out a while back, Phil?
Yes.
Because you threw out a Seth Curry comes back to the Wolves trade for sure in the Ben Simmons deal.
Mine was more Russell and Malik and maybe a pick for Ben Simmons and Seth Curry.
Okay.
I feel like giving up Jaden McDaniels as well that's a pretty big haul. But listen, Ben Simmons at one point was considered one of the top 15 or 20 players in the NBA when you account for defense and passing and all those things.
Yes.
So you're not going to just get him for nothing. You're going to give up something. How would you guys feel about that? D'Lo, Beasley, Jaden McDaniels, and a future first-round pick for Ben Simmons, and you'd be getting Seth Curry back. Sniper shooter Seth Curry.
I've been convinced that if this deal is going to be made at some point, and it's not going to be a 3-team, it's going to be just the Wolves and Sixers, that Jaden McDaniels is gone.
Honestly, and if you're getting Ben Simmons, that's fine.
And he is an attractive young player who could be absolutely, to our basketball scout Declan's credit, be outstanding. If this would improve you enough to make you immediately competitive for a playoff spot, and I'm not talking necessarily a play-in spot, I'm talking actually a top 8 spot. Oh my God.
Playoffs.
It intrigues me. I mean, do Ben Simmons' struggles concern me? Absolutely. Because I think the shot is broken, and I think it's mental, which worries me a lot. But the defense is so good. But do I think that Gerson would do this trade? Yes, absolutely. I think Gerson Rosas would make this.
Friend of the show.
I would not be surprised if this is the damn near the exact trade. It might have an extra draft pick, to be honest with you guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is the exact type of trade that Gerson has offered that he's made to the Sixers and Daryl Morey.
You might wonder why, like, aren't Malik Beasley and Seth Curry like duplicate players? Why swap? Well, their contracts are different. I think Beasley has more money in his contract, so it would just, a lot of this would be financial jockeying.
Sure.
But on Jaden McDaniels, real quick, we can do more of this later in the week, but I love him. He does have a ton of upside, and he was great in Summer League, but he's still largely a theory, right? Like, he's not an established great player, and there's
That's what you ask.
He's a lottery ticket still.
The executive producer seemed to call it pretty quickly right there.
I did.
But yes, he is.
But
I mean,
he's not a sure thing, is what I'm saying.
No,
so if you can trade him while people think that he might be a sure thing for Ben Simmons, I wouldn't hesitate.
The issue is when it comes the issue when it comes to trading for these guys is everyone always wants to fleece someone, and this isn't NBA 2K21 where you can turn off trade, logical trade meter on. Like, you have to give up significant assets. And if that means giving up Jaden McDaniels, then that's kind of the price of poker. You can't just fleece a team because you want all these guys to stay together. Would it be great if you had, like, seriously, on a defensive prowess, if you could keep Jaden McDaniels and Ben Simmons on the same team, because Jaden's bread and butter looks like it's going to be his defense, obviously. Like, that would be sweet. But you're probably going to have to give up D'Lo and Jaden McDaniels, if not one or the other. So it's a tough spot to be, but that's the price of poker, man.
Hey, Phil, quick question. If the Wolves make that trade, how good are they compared to if they don't?
If they make that exact trade?
Yeah, let's say they make a 2-team trade.
So I think they're better. And I think there's a lot of people that watch and listen to our show that love D'Angelo Russell. I'm very curious. I'm skeptical about D'Lo as a top player who makes that much money.
Me too.
Because I don't think he plays enough defense. He doesn't play any defense, really.
Nope.
But I'm not, I would be curious to see him healthy with this current nucleus. But if you could swap D'Lo for Ben Simmons and get all of that perimeter defense, guarding multiple different positions, the way that Simmons' game in pick and roll could mesh with Cat's game or Anthony Edwards' game, I just think Simmons is a better fit with Ant and Cat than D'Lo is. Mm-hmm. All things considered, defense included. So I think they're better. I legitimately think they're better. And then one more here. Simmons to the Raptors on this website, and the Raptors have made an offer reportedly, according to multiple outlets, that the Sixers would get Pascal Siakam and Malachi Flynn, who's a shooting guard, and the Raptors would get Ben Simmons. So there's a Warriors one on here too. Andrew Wiggins, James Wiseman, Moses Moody, and a future first for Simmons and Tyrese Maxey. That would be a huge blockbuster.
Yeah, that'd be.
So it's kind of what's being floated around right now. There you go.
Reckless speculation.
All right. Whew. That was great. Tomorrow is actually Reckless Speculation Thursday, too. So there's more where this came from.
What's left for tomorrow?
Oh, Doogie, man. Doogie's going to have some information here.
Right.
It'll be great.
That's right. Okay.
So, all right, we're going to take a second here, collect ourselves, because write that down, and an accountability session coming up next where we admit that we were wrong and celebrate the rare occasions where we
actually don't mind being wrong sometimes.
Dingers.